right, guys, as promised, this is going to be more of a strategy show as we kind of gear up for the NFL season. There is a couple of more weeks before we can really start to dive into week one. On a serious note, we can't really talk Showdown because, Showdown is only the single game, and there's, a lot of injury news and a lot of reports that are going to change. One thing I thought was really fascinating that you always hear kind of these lead-up shows or these predictions or preview shows is someone will tell you a strategy, say it's stacking, and they'll be like, oh, stack this quarterback with this wide receiver, and they'll use a very common structural build or a common thing they like, but they don't explain to you why they're doing that thing. So it's like play a cheap quarterback with his good wide receiver. So, for example, maybe a Sam Darnold and Justin Jefferson. And they'll be like, that's good value, and then you can build a good lineup. And while that's true, I want to kind of get into okay, that's your main strategy, or this is the main strategy. But what else do you do with that lineup? Or even if you looked at it from a draft perspective, it's like, yes, you want to take this guy in the first round, but why don't you explain to me why you took that guy in the first round and how it correlates to your fifth round pick and your sixth round pick? So what I wanted to do is get into the strategy of something we like or something we believe in, but then the why too. Why we decide that's so valuable. So that was kind of my main topic, and then we can go off and talk about any subtopics or anything that breaks during the show as well, and see what we get. But that was kind of the idea. Donnie, Gov, Evan, how we doing?
What's up, everyone?
All right.
Well, let's see, Logan. Where do I start with that? So, I know what strategies I want to employ for the year. I agree. We know. I'm starting to see what is probably going to be the takes. What's going to be the top stacks from people.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to hear it from all the guys on YouTube. These are the guys that you want to play. I can already start to tell who they're going to be. We've got the end of preseason, which I still am not sure I like that they only do 3 games, but it does seem like they've got it more seamless to flow into the season.
What I like most about it, though, is as you said, everyone's going to have a content show and be like, this is my favorite stack, but they never go in depth of why they do certain things. So that's why I thought would be most interesting. For example, I mentioned the Sam Darnold and Justin Jefferson thing. It's that is a good stack, but it's a good stack mainly because it opens up value. But then because of some of the rules and some of that kind of stuff, people don't want to actually show you a full lineup, or they don't want to give up too much of their edge. So I guess we don't want to do that either, but it's I kind of want to give the people an idea of why we do certain things more than to say this is a good idea. Because you could even argue that stacking is a bad idea, but at least then I want to know okay, why are you anti-stack? Why is that a good strategy?
Why don't you start us off by building us a sample lineup and give us an example based on that?
Well, I keep using it, but why don't we just do the Sam Darnold, Justin Jefferson thing? It's that, and the idea is this: it's Sam Darnold and Justin Jefferson, cheap stack, but not enough people think about so Josh Allen compared to Dalton Kincaid is another way to do that. But a lot of people think of they don't think of the 2v2 kind of scenario there. They think of Josh Allen, he's the expensive quarterback, but Kincaid is more expensive than Sam Darnold when you look at the cumulative of that stack in general. So actually, the Justin Jefferson stack, I think, is cheaper, for example. I haven't actually done the math, but I believe that's true. And that's the kind of stuff I want to get into is more when people start to realize that some of this stuff is actually possible if they just reverse engineer it or engineer it differently. So I can pull up that example of the Justin Jefferson team and compare it to the Buffalo Bills team.
Yeah, there you go. Take us through it.
Well, I got another example because I think we just going through some stack ideas is a good idea. And we were talking about, I'm pretty sure offline, there's a big difference, very similar stack to the Justin Jefferson and Sam Darnold team. You could just go Minshew and get a guy like Devontae Adams and still get that, the Aaron Jones, which is another underpriced guy in a game where Minnesota will not be pushed. So there are a lot of ways you can go if you want to go the cheap quarterback route or maybe more expensive with the cheap weapon.
See the Buffalo Bills stack will leave you 36,000 for the rest of your lineup.
The cheapest, I think, would be the Adams Minshew.
They're off by 200. I'm looking at the other one on my screen. The Arnold and Jefferson stack will leave you 36.4. So, like, yeah, you can do Josh Allen and Kincaid or Darnold and Jefferson if you, like, had them in the flex or something.
Right.
Like, they are, salary-wise, they are basically the same block of points.
And honestly, I didn't even know the difference because I wanted to do it.
Well, that's the thing. Do you think they are? Do you think Darnold and Jefferson could equal the same amount of points as Allen and Kincaid? I actually think Allen and Kincaid have a much higher ceiling, to be honest. Like, Allen could have like a 25, 30-point day, Jalen Hurts style, maybe with a rushing touchdown or two, while also throwing a touchdown to Kincaid, and he has like 15 to 18 points.
Do we have any reason to believe that's not plausible?
No, that's the thing. I think that's totally plausible for Buffalo. So, like, in that scenario, let's say Allen got 30 and Kincaid got 18.
Right.
So that's 48 points you get from that. What does Darnold have to do and Jefferson? Like, Jefferson's probably got to get almost all of that 40, with Darnold getting you 15 to 20, because he's not very good. He's not getting you rushing. If he's not throwing like 4 touchdowns to Jefferson or Addison, he's probably not doing much, but I don't know. So, like,
with
Jefferson
no Hawk
has
to start the year.
No Hawk to start the year. That helps him with, like, possession stuff. So, like, if Jefferson starts getting, like, 15 target games, like, watch out.
Well, that was to Donnie's point, too, with the Minshew thing. It's like we could all name a cheap stack, right? We could all think of a quarterback that's cheap on DraftKings week 1, and we could pair him with the favorite. That's an easy thing. But when we start to look at, like, the stack example I brought up, it's like, can you do something with that $200? Does it allow you to get to a tight end that you would like more? Does it allow you to get to a defense that you prefer more, that you can stack with a running back? Like, how much of the secondary stuff actually helps you in a lineup? And that's the kind of stuff I don't think people talk enough about.
Yeah, I think the difference between Minshew and Adams compared to Darnold and Jefferson was like 600 to 800. It's around that range. That's where you get into. That's a big difference, and I could definitely see the same ceiling.
That's a good point, and that's what I mean. Sure, it's variance, but like part of it is eliminating the variance or playing a safer guy because you're like, I'm risky here. I'm playing this cheap quarterback here, or I'm playing this upside wide receiver here. So I want to use that $800 to save salary. So that's kind of what I wanted to talk about. Is like when you've committed to something because you want it to equal something, how do you actually get it to have that same equation? Because it's easy to say, oh yeah, can you think of a cheap stack? Every one of us can think of a cheap stack,
Exactly. Like, we can put Bryce Young with Deontay. That barely takes up 10K.
Yeah, I mean, hey, Jacoby Brissett and
don't.
I mean,
Pop Douglas.
In all seriousness, though, I bet I could say to Evan, like, pick the game that you hate the most, and I guarantee we could still pick that game, and you could find pieces in that game that you like. That's not really the idea, though. The idea is to build something that, like, you think actually has a chance to win, but actual, like, concrete reasons of why you think it has a chance to win. And like I said,
I get that idea, but like until we get to the week, I won't have any like plays, as you said, that like I could even look at and be like, why would this even happen? Like you want like the other people who are bringing it out there, they're not going to do it. So like that's what I get. You want to help everyone with that,
right?
But we got to wait for those plays,
or sometimes
actually happen.
And we're still waiting for those extra injuries that are going to happen throughout the weeks that we're waiting on.
Everyone's probably going to get a good deal of rest this last week before we bring
probably, but you're still probably going to have that one guy that gets hurt, and all of a sudden Gus Bus is the only running back. They cut
Kadarius Toney. I don't think there's anyone.
Well, I mean, I think it was last year we were talking about starting. I think he was actually on the cover, Deion Jackson from the Colts when Jonathan Taylor was holding out. I believe that was.
It was Deion Jackson.
So that's an idea of when you're like, oh, I'm just going to go cheap running back. That can go wrong very quickly. And like, I'll be first to admit it, I fell into that trap. And that's kind of what I'm presenting to you is you're going to see a lot of screenshots. You're going to see a lot of content creators say, with a little fancy graphics and all that kind of fancy stuff and be like, you got to play this guy. This is the secret guy. But it's like, unless you actually believe it or you know how to build around it, it doesn't really mean much. Let's just say that Evan knew a really cheap running back that he thought was going to get 20 carries. And let's just assume that we could guarantee that this, cheap running back was going to get 20 carries. Evan still has to build a good lineup around that. Like we're talking about, 2024 GPPs. You still have to have a high upside with your score. You can't just have one or two, lucky plays or maybe get, have a good chance here. You got to have some correlation with your lineups.
Lucky plays are how you cash.
You could definitely be safe in cash. But
I'm sorry. I meant like top cash, like not just like $1, $2, which there's nothing wrong with that. But I'm just saying it's usually those guys that play the illogical play.
Yeah, I don't like to think about it like luck because if it's my strategy to throw an illogical play or so, as you say, into my lineup, then like I'm not against that in like the super large field tournaments. Like I'm not doing that in like a small field single entry, but like I'll throw something like that in the millie. I get lucky on a 5%, 2% guy that no one's playing. Like, hell yeah.
All of a sudden, Kyle Juszczyk's your captain, and there you are.
That actually is a good point that you have to know your contest selection. Because if you're playing even a GPP or a cash game, the strategies are way different. But even then, you can't just like play the 3K wide receiver in the millie because you're like, well, I got to get crazy and got to get so unique. And you still have to have a theory behind why you do it.
Can you do me a favor, by the way? Can you go to Indy?
Yep.
Specifically, because that's a game that's going to be highly owned. And assuming the stack partner will be one of the high volume slot guys for Indy. But they are now down to, 2 min-price tight ends, and that's it on their roster? Maybe a third if they didn't cut another one. Like their tight end room is very thin.
They have Granson, and then everyone else is min-priced, yes.
But you would agree that that's a popular game to attack because of Houston, right?
Right. That's going to be a popular game because of Houston, and there's the cheap options if you want to go specifically to tight end.
Are you saying, because I don't think the tight ends from the Colts are going to be high owned, because I don't think people are going to trust who it is. So I actually think this is a sneaky way to stack this game, Donnie.
Yes,
I think
that's where I was getting at. I don't think this game's like a great stack game anyway, but
if this game is popular, this would be a game I'd like. So let me just play Mixon in the Houston defense and hope Indy has a shit first game.
Right, like I don't. But if you want to get different, if you feel this is the high scoring game of the week, because we know Anthony Richardson has that potential, he also has the potential to not be great. But if you think the Colts offense can match, Granson probably gets some kind of workload, and now that he's, I'd assume, the guaranteed starter.
I think I'd rather play Mo Alley Cox.
Is he still on the team?
He's on DK.
But have they updated this with the cuts? Or is this still the 90 man?
We'll see. I mean, that's the few things we have to wait for. But like, if it's him, you would think with Jelani Woods on IR, they would keep 2 or 3, and it would be like Branson and Mo Alley and one of their guys that they like.
Yes,
the other guy might go to the practice squad.
According to RotoWire here, it basically says that they think Cox will be the number 2 tight end. Basically, and they may be starting
the Colts. There's one depth chart that has Mo Alley Cox as the starter, and then Granson. We'll see. Obviously, we'll see what their official depth chart
says. They'll keep at least those 2. Maybe
they have 4. They have 4 tight ends right now.
But your idea then, Donnie, forget the name. Just say we knew who it was going to be. Your idea is to play one of these cheap tight ends, and then what?
If you want the high upside of this game and think it's the game, you just go with the Houston onslaught, I'd assume.
So then, okay, that's what I was going to ask. So you're basically using Indy as a cheap greenback, but then you want to load up on Houston. So what does that look like?
Double up on Houston, a Stroud, and your
now
pick
that's
of
the
weapons.
thing. Then it's like
See, that's why I don't like it.
I think this is how you have to play Houston as of right now till further notice.
Hold on one second.
I do like the fact of going Stroud with a double because
hold on 1 second though. Logan said he doesn't like it. Donnie, you built this lineup. This sounds exactly like a Logan lineup because if you get the cheap tight end to bring it back with Houston's great offense, what's not to like, Logan?
I don't know who CJ likes out of this receiving group.
Right, I agree.
If there was a CD Lamb, if there was a wide receiver that I'm like, oh, he's going to get 10 targets, or he is the guy, then I'm okay paying these upper prices. But
see,
I don't.
That would make me want to play this lineup a little more if what you're saying is true and that's what people see.
Yeah.
And it scares them off a high total game that could be popular. Now I'm with you. And Branson's a cheap way of fitting it in, whether you wanted to do Diggs or Dell with Nico. Or maybe you do Diggs and Dell and say Nico had a stellar season last year, but is he really that guy?
See, that's
I'm not trying to guess which one Stroud likes.
See, that's the thing. I get what you're saying. Like how are you going to build this out? Now the next thought is like literally what are his receiving weapons?
That was the whole idea.
Do you think it's going to be like last year and just go Nico and Tank game one and see what happens when Diggs doesn't get the ball? Or do you know Diggs is going to get the ball, so you're definitely playing him with one of Nico or Tank? And then how do you weigh that? I would play Tank over Nico.
I absolutely would not play Tank over Nico, depending on what price point I'm going for. Like, Tank's price at $5,500, though, is pretty good if you're looking for, like, that third exciting boomer bust playmaking wide receiver in your lineup. But based off of Nico's target volume and how much he's getting paid, I think he's definitely going to get more, if not marginally more targets than Stephon Diggs.
Well, that's my point. It's like, I didn't even care which one of us is right. But that was the idea of this show. It's like, tell us what you do after this. Like, if this is the good shell, and obviously we might vary, and it might be a $2,000 difference, but that's what I
not my favorite, to be honest. But it's a good thing to look at because I think this will be a popular idea, whether it's Dell and Diggs or Diggs and Collins.
And that's all I wanted to do was take these shell ideas and then tell people what you would do with it. So, like, because I think we all agree that game's going to score points, right?
You could argue you do the same thing with the Chicago as well.
Well, why'd you clear it, though, Logan? Do we want to complete that lineup just to give an example?
You can complete it if you want. Like, what would you do with that?
Well, I mean, it's so we had Stroud at quarterback, and then Tank Dell as a cheap wide receiver, and then a cheap tight end. So then, would you want to go hero running back, or would you want to go hero wide receiver from there?
I don't know, because that's what I'm saying is, like, that's the fun for me, because I don't like it. So, like, that's why I almost want you to be a salesman, Evan, if you like it, to tell me why, because I don't like that build. But there could be some good strategy behind it. Like, there could be a nugget of good information there, but I don't see it.
Well, I mean, I'm not here to sell anything to you. I was just thinking in terms of, I thought we were just opening this box and seeing what we could do with something we're not particularly comfortable with.
Yeah, I burned the box is what I'm telling you. I think it's a bad idea.
Okay.
So but you might be right. Maybe it's a valuable box. But I don't know what to do with it. So to me, it's like Boxing Day. I want to get rid of the damn thing. But if you think, is there something interesting?
Well, okay. Well, how would you build it, Logan? How would you start your lineup? And so we can,
as of right now.
Now, how would you start your lineup?
Donnie's right, though. I think this game is popular, so I would stay away from it. The only guy I would honestly have that interested is A.D. Mitchell, who I think is one of the cheapest values on the board. If you think Josh Downs is truly questionable. So
you've always been a believer in Adonai Mitchell, so I can see you sticking him in there as a cheap option.
So then if everyone wants to play like Stroud and Collins, I would probably play like Mitchell and Richardson, and then have like have like a Mixon bring back on Houston.
Well, let's see what it looks like. Put him in.
Fair enough. I can do that.
Okay. Yeah.
Because I would say everyone's going to play the wide receivers and the quarterback from Houston, so I would play Mixon, and then I would play Richardson. Because I think a lot of people, Richardson might be popular, but I think a lot of people will go with playing naked Richardson, right? They'll go for the rushing upside, where it's like, no, if I
see, and here's the funny thing: you put that in, that's only like an extra 2,000, maybe 3,000 from those single stacks we were looking at with like Darnold and Jefferson.
And now you get
for the same price as Darnold and Jefferson, you get Richardson, A.D. Mitchell, and Mixon on the bringback.
Yeah. But even then, like if I had to, I don't even know if I like it because I don't like. That's my point with this whole exercise is I don't even know a secondary thing I would do with this.
But that was the point of this lineup, Logan. You were asked like, what would you do to start this, right?
Well, actually, no. He was asking like, what would we do to like. So now, so here's your core. You don't like it, but like, okay,
right.
So like that wasn't even what we were asking. Like you were saying, like when the takes come out, and like when you get the core of what they give you, they'll say, play Tua and Tyreek, and then play Kirk on the other side, or like we were talking here, this will be popular. They'll say play Stroud and the two doubles. Well, once you have that, why are you doing that? You're doing that because those are high total games that we're probably going to score a lot of points because they're going to be back and forth. Indiana Dome, like all of those things that we look for in a good lineup. But afterwards, like you're right. Now I need to find a shot somewhere, or I need to take either a low-owned play in this game or another low-owned play or two in some other games to fill this out. Like that's the way you need to fill that out. You can't just like, okay, I have those guys, and maybe you got another one play from another dude. But like that's actually not horrible. Like, what's your other one play? It comes from another game, even if it's popular. Like, use it to fill it in. Then like fill it in with the guy you want. But like I'm going to use my leverage strategy where like I didn't think I was getting enough leverage on my stuff. So like I'm going to look at ownership more. I'm going to try to leverage those games. So like let's say there's two popular games because there totally can be on a 13-game slate. Let's say it's Houston, Indy. Let's say it's Miami, Jacksonville, or even Buffalo, Arizona, or something like that. Like so. If one or two of those games are popular, I might just leverage off one game and play the low-owned guys from that and then do the Houston stack. Or maybe I do the Tua stack and I just play like a one-off Branson with a one-off A.D. Mitchell or something. Like maybe I add that to like the Tua stack and something like that. Like that would probably help round out the ownership and that of the lineup. But I also need to believe that play is going to work.
Right.
I do want to point something out that I think is interesting about the cuts that happened today.
What's
the
that?
Vikings have left themselves with two running backs on their roster. Just Aaron Jones, just Ty Chandler. You know they're bringing somebody else in. And then they also have their fullback in C.J. Ham.
Wouldn't that be some shit if it was Dalvin Cook?
And he's going to Dallas. Didn't you know?
Well, allegedly practice. Well, I mean, they would say potentially practice squad material, but
A lot of people think it's P. Ryan. Like he is the prime candidate. Not so much for Minnesota but he is the prime candidate for one of these fill-in teams.
He would be a great fit anywhere he goes. I mean, there was a lot of rumors saying he's going to go back to Cincy, but I don't think that's going to happen.
I mean, it will be
could go like anywhere and be a great backup or even a spot starter. Yeah.
No, I'm just waiting for the Dalvin Cook mini return.
I don't even think it's about it. They need a third guy. We know that.
But to that point, though, Donnie, do you think, like, even if they get that third guy and he can contribute at some point in the season, do you think there's a leverage for week one to be like, even if they want this guy or they're bringing him in late, maybe we play a Ty Chandler or a.
To me, they've gone so far into Aaron Jones, and they're playing a Giants team. I already wanted to play Aaron Jones.
Right.
This is telling me, yes, more Aaron Jones.
Because even if they like that third guy, he's still got to learn the system, right? Like he's still got to get up. So you're basically saying there's two guys right now that know this. That is an interesting point. See, for me, it was almost like I was looking at A.D. Mitchell, like because we were talking about that game, but that's one of my cheap values I'm thinking about. Another guy would be like reacting to trades is one of my strategies in week one because the pricing comes out so early. So a guy like Luke McCaffrey just automatically is triggered in my head. Because even if he has a bad week, if he catches some at his price, he's like 300 more than the men,
It's kind of like the same plays. Like it's a little cheaper than A.D. Mitchell. It's like 1,000 cheaper.
Or sometimes we'll see it in content creation too, Gov, where it's like, this guy's really popular, so we're going to put him on the cover. And then people will be like, we'll play this guy. But it's like, yeah, but now explain to me how to play this guy different. Like Tyreek Hill, for example. You might say like, oh, he's got huge upside to have a 30-point week, week one, because he always has the chance to have 30 points. But now it's
he almost always does have 30 points.
Right. But now it's like, how do you build a smart lineup with him where you still capitalize on that upside, but you can still survive a min cash, for example, if he doesn't hit that ceiling?
Is that always the goal? Honestly, though, Logan, I don't. I mean, if you're already banking on all that salary that goes into Tyreek Hill,
yeah.
To me, if he fails, then your lineup probably is going to fail anyway.
Yeah.
So I think I'm just going to double down on my, hey, I'm going to play Tyreek Hill, and build around that base.
That's where you play Tyreek Hill and then Tua based on this? Is that what you're telling me?
I don't even think you have to do that, but I would probably lean towards that. If I'm saying Tyreek Hill is going to have a monster week one, I feel like I have to play the rest of the week around Tyreek Hill is going to be the number one receiver week one.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned it because I think that those are the non-sexy points that go miss in strategies like that. Everyone knows that Tyreek Hill is like the good attractive piece to a good stack, right? You mentioned the Dolphins. You can mention Tyreek Hill or Tua, but it's like, okay, but that's a good point, Donnie. If you're going to shoot for that upside, you want to shoot all the way up to that upside. Evan mentioned earlier, if you're playing a tournament, you want to get to the very top of that tournament. You don't want to just get somewhere near the top. You either want to go all the way to the top or, try again next week. That's the way I like it.
My thing is, you're going to be real upset if you are saying, hey, I 100% know Tyreek Hill is going to have this great week. And then I only play Tyreek Hill from that game. And everyone goes, because Tyreek Hill is not going to have a 40-point week by himself. It's not possible. So something's got to give in that game. I might as well play it like it's going to give.
It's a good point. So now maybe I'm wrong, but from what I'm hearing is if you believe in the Dolphins that way, Donnie, you would play like Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill in the same lineup, or is that too crazy?
I don't think that's crazy at all. We've seen them have good games together. I mean,
so you're definitely doing a Tua stack with that, right? You're not just playing.
You would have to do Tua if you're playing Waddle and Tyreek.
But that's the secondary point of this show. It's like, okay, now you're doing that. Now tell people what else you gain from doing that. Like, of course, in that example, I would think the ownership and the uniqueness of just playing both of them from the same team makes you so different. So then you can just play expensive, maybe not expensive guys because Tyreek.
No, because like I was about to say, like that's the opposite argument of Diggs and Nico. Like everyone's going to play a double of them in some combination of the three. But like that's going to help pull ownership. Like people will still play Tua doubles. Like, but I also think like Tyreek himself, no matter what, like you could take away Tua and Waddle, and you're still going to have a lot of ownership because of Tyreek. I actually think Tua and Waddle, like you have a bit of a point. Tua and Waddle might not be as highly owned as everyone does because more people are going to play Tyreek like naked, straight up, or just a Tyreek with a Jacksonville guy, and then play the Stroud stack.
Evan, you were about to say something?
Yeah, if you're willing to share my screen, I built a sample lineup that I'd be happy to explain just for the sake of discussion here.
Great.
This would be if you don't want to bet on the Tyreek explosive week 1 well, by we, I really mean more Donnie has brought up to talk about. So the idea behind this lineup is to go value plays everywhere except for defense, special teams, and flex. And the idea behind it is to try and maximize the value out of all these starters that could hit so that you can get somebody else that's a big name for the flex and then spend money on a good defense like the Cowboys that have known playmakers that score well in fantasy.
Yeah.
Well,
I like this line too because to me, it's like everyone wants to bet on Caleb Williams and best ball because they're like, well, we think he is generational. Like we love the offense. We love his upside. What I like about this is you're saying, no, I think he's good enough that, this is a good team, game to stack right away. And so, I do think there's an edge if you believe the rookie has that big of an upside to go and attack him in a week-to-week kind of strategy. I really think there's an edge to that.
I'm willing to take a shot against Tennessee's revamped defense.
Yeah.
I don't mind that. Like, that's going to give you a low-owned stack. That's good.
And their starting linebacker has yet to practice with them. So
the only thing I don't like
Jones.
is the only thing that would be off-putting to me, and I'd have to look at this closer, but I know the Chargers are going to suck probably, but do you really play both Adams and Myers against them without playing Minshew?
Well,
I feel like I'd rather have someone other than Myers, if there is.
Well,
so
that
would be my thought. I would also pay down a defense. I don't see the reason to just play for the Cowboys against Cleveland.
Well, I just don't trust Cleveland's offense at this point, but at the same time, I would save $600 if I went Minshew instead of Caleb.
Well, let me ask him really obvious questions I think might provoke some good answers here. What was the main goal with this? What was the one thing you were like, I have to do in this lineup because this is what I believe in? If you were to deconstruct this lineup. What's the one thing you would push back?
I just also noticed you have a running back against your defense. So I wouldn't play that defense, yeah.
Well, I figured Ford is going to get the majority of the volume, even if it's Watson or if it's whoever the fuck is starting at quarterback, we'll probably have to check down a lot.
Okay, I could see how he could still get there in a low-scoring game or a game where Watson fucks up and there's a defensive touchdown, but
Amari
that's
Cooper
what you probably need.
Amari Cooper's known to disappear. I don't believe in Jerry Jeudy until I see him. And Elijah Moore, unfortunately, doesn't get enough targets in this offense. And David Njoku's at least a good red zone threat. But how many times do we think they're going to get there against Dallas's good defense?
You have a solid point. There are, yeah.
See, to me, I like this line because of Caleb because I think he's in a dead zone in week 1.
Yeah, that actually.
In this kind of mindset, it's he's a rookie, so no one's seen it. So everyone wants the highest upside, but he's too expensive to really celebrate the high upside, if that makes sense. Daniels is a lot cheaper that has a very high upside, fun kind of fantasy. Wow, wouldn't it be cool if we saw him rush for 100 yards and throw 300 yards passing?
Well, let's be honest. For any of the rookie quarterbacks, we don't even know their full upsides yet because we haven't seen regular season action yet.
Right, but that's my point, Evan. Is when we see the cheap rookie quarterback, the price does matter because it's well, yeah, but if we think Caleb's gonna have a fun rookie, game for his first week, well, Daniels is $200. I don't even know his price, but let's just say he's $2,000 cheaper or $1,000 cheaper. It's yeah, I can cheer for that too, and then I can pay up for Justin Jefferson and not Adams. So, then we start playing this game where you're betting on, no, Caleb is the guy. He's generational. He's in a range where he has just as much upside as anyone else, but no one wants to pay for it because they haven't seen it yet.
So I don't know if this matters, but the way that I started to build this lineup was I said, okay, I'll start with my 2 value running backs, and then I'll see who I can pick for good prices based off of just last year average fantasy numbers for wide receivers. And I came up with 4 games. Tennessee at Chicago, Dallas at Cleveland, Houston at Indy, and then Vegas at Chargers. Mm-hmm. And then I just went from there to see how else do I finish off this lineup.
I really like it. I like Tony Pollard. I'm not a big Spears guy, so like that's another thing is like maybe I'm wrong on Spears, but like it wouldn't make sense for me to be like half in, half out if I'm going to play a guy in week 1. Like I'm all in on Tony. I think Tony is a lot better than Spears. So I like this idea of this lineup because it's like you're betting on Tony being the guy.
I'm not betting on Tony being the guy. I'm betting on Tony getting enough volume to get relevant fantasy points because I think you can be half in and half out on Pollard and Spears because this is going to be a split backfield.
But he's also cheap enough. Like if he ends up getting the touchdowns in the first game, like yeah, it totally works out.
I guess that's true. Like to Evan's point, you could have Spears do something still. He's cheap enough where he still has, a decent game, and you could still get there with Tony's upside, whether that be touchdowns or what have you. Donnie, it looked like you were about to say something.
Not really. I'm all out on Tennessee's running game. I don't like either running backs, to be honest. Maybe Chicago can't stop them. To me, that doesn't say much. I don't like their run game at all.
That's what I love about this show because it's like we can each give you a strategy, and then we're showing you what happens with that full strategy.
So that price for a running back isn't bad, I will say, but I don't see a world where I'll play it much.
Yeah.
I'm with you on that one, Donnie. I don't think Pollard or Ford are necessarily going to do well against these defenses, but I just want the PPR volume.
Actually, I can leave you on that.
I know it's not on this slate per se, and that's kind of what we're focusing on, but there is the Monday night game where you have
we can talk some showdown strategy.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Donnie.
Well, there's the Niners, and as time goes on, Trent Williams seems like he will not be playing if he doesn't get this contract figured out soon. I don't know a world where you can play McCaffrey and just be super confident when they're without their best left tackle. That offensive line is just not the same without a Trent Williams there.
Yeah, I remember when McCaffrey got drafted. It was right after we lost like two of our good offensive linemen and our center and that. It's like, so Cam with his new weapon, he was pretty good with the crappy offensive line. So like,
right. But can Brock Purdy play without
like if anything, having McCaffrey helps you with a rebuilding offensive line because I got a guy who can get it to away quick.
Is he worth? Is it worth playing McCaffrey at 10% of your salary? Like that's what I kind of wanted to talk about a little bit because I don't know I've never looked at the slate, but it is interesting that they might be without their left tackle. And as the season goes on, if Trent Williams just decides I'm not playing, that's really rough to this Niners Super Bowl chances.
And the Niners are already having trouble like figuring out who to trade at this point. Like if you have to trade Trent, that's even more worse.
Mm-hmm. Well, that actually is kind of a funny good point, though, is like we don't obviously draft offensive linemen, but they do affect fantasy tremendously.
You should know the offensive linemen for all the offenses if you're going to gamble responsibly.
I do agree with that strongly. But remember your Caleb Williams point out saying that he's in a dead zone. I knew he was because it just came to me. I had to actually look it up to actually know the names around him, but I found it. The guys around him that you would feel more comfortable with, not to say they are better plays, but like Justin Herbert is right around his range. It's like people are like, well, I know Justin Herbert. He's more of a casual name, Or like I said, Daniels I thought was cheaper than him, and he is. So people were like, well, if you're going to go with the rookie upside and this fun, fancy run around, throw the ball a lot offense, they're going to think of Cliff Kingsbury and be like, well, saving that $400 really means a lot. So that's why I like kind of being like, no, I want to jam in Williams here. That's why I like that lineup.
I agree, though. There is an upside to just saying, hey, man, the Washington should have Daniels in a situation where he's going to throw a lot. I really like Daniels week 1, and if I'm going to get him, I want to get him when he's this price.
Yeah. But
I was going to ask, like, going off of the 4 games that I picked, like, I guess we don't have to limit to those 4 games. So the screen that you've got here, out of all these starting quarterbacks, I'm thinking the chalkiest guys are going to be the expensive guys like Stroud, and then the cheap guys like Minshew. Is it the in-between guys that are going to be the least chalky?
I would guess so. Because I would drop as low as Bryce Young or Bo Nix, but I live on the wild side.
I don't see
see
a
them
world
being-
where like a Cousins gets played or a Watson. You know, that's I think the dead zone. I don't know if Herbert really gets touched or Mayfield, because if you're going to play Mayfield or Herbert, you might as well play Daniels for the upside.
No, I think if you're going to drop to this range, it's either Caleb because you're going to go
Right.
like I want to play the fun guy, or you're going to go Justin because you're like, well, you know that team was a disaster, but I always believed that Justin Herbert's talent was there. Where I think Gov would be more of a, you know, like no one's going to think about this guy. I want to play Baker Mayfield type, or even a Geno Smith.
So, but where's
okay. I was about to say I was not thinking Baker. I was actually thinking Geno. Okay, so you kind of got me there.
Where is Anthony Richardson on this list? Because couldn't you argue Daniels is just in a
he's ahead of
situation?
He's ahead of Trevor, Cousins, Watson, Caleb.
He's in the Trevor.
Right behind Kyler, right behind Burrow.
Very similar play styles. And you're giving me Jaden Daniels, who is in a much better situation, I'd argue. Much QB friendly fantasy wise, anyway.
So again, like I always thought this would be a good idea, and I'm glad we kind of got in the flow here. If we could name any of these quarterbacks and they could be good plays, we could build good lineups with any of these guys, right? But what's the one guy where you pick him in a lineup and he just makes your stomach turn the most, or you just think it's a bad start? Like maybe not a bad lineup, but just a bad start. Is one of the guys where you're like, okay, this is not smart. This is not good.
Jacoby. Throw him in.
Jacoby Jones?
Jacoby Brissett. I mean, I Daniel Jones as well, speaking of Jones. Those are the two quarterbacks where I just don't see a world where it's viable.
Well, like I said, Bo Nix is like actually considered maybe a starter, and he's just as cheap, you know.
Right. I mean, Bo Nix, I think, is a good play, though.
Oh God, Derek Carr.
I could see it, Derek Carr.
There's a couple.
Carolina's
that are just
I actually believe that our defense will be good. I don't know if Bryce Young is going to be better. I don't know. I trust that he should be, but I don't know.
You also hated the draft pick from the start, so you are a little biased, probably more than you need to be.
But okay, so let's do that though, Donnie. Let's do that just for a fun exercise. Like, let's give people we probably thought about this lineup too much. Let's just assume that we knew Jacoby was starting.
Even if it's May, it's a bad play. So
even if it's May, it's a bad play. Yeah. There's a slogan for New England folks.
I would agree with you though, because like I said, we're smart enough. We could build this lineup, but what does it really give us? Like,
to me, you have to throw Polk in for the upside, because I guess the starters are Douglas, Polk, and Thornton is what they're saying.
Okay, let's do Polk because he's fun. Like it's a really
if what you're saying is true, we're playing Tyquan Thornton,
and then you bring back with the fun Jamar Chase. Heck yeah, man!
So then we go Chase, but that's my point with this strategy. It's like, okay, now we got a cheap option, but what does it really give us that we're like, oh my god, we can't get this if we don't do it this way? You know,
I don't know if there is anything like that. I think what we've actually proven in the last few minutes is that there's a shit ton of those.
Yeah,
and they're actually people are going to throw those out there, and people need to realize when they say here's the cheap stack of the week or whatever, and there's 5 different stacks thrown out there by 5 different dudes.
Well, like Logan,
you have to be able to do your research to know that. That's where I use my strategy. I follow the Vegas lines and I have my projections, and that's basically my baseline. People need to realize that's, and then from there I'll take secondary chances hitting on my leverage. That's about all I can think of. And I don't have those solid right now, so I can't give you a full second step stuff. But we can talk all day about the cheap stacks that could actually work.
Just for Gov's point, if you did put Tyquan Thornton in there, because there is a rumor that Alex Van Pelt has fallen in love with him instead of Polk. If you put Thornton instead of Polk,
why not play the double?
I'm getting to my point. I mean, I guess you could if you want to just double down on it.
Okay, let's
So take Polk out, just because I think that's so stupid. And is there a world where you could at least give me Tyreek and CD in the same line?
Okay, let's try that.
I just want to see.
Okay, so let's see, is that possible? Yeah.
Like I just want to.
You'll still probably need about 50. Let's see.
And to that point,
you're gonna have 2 cheap spots, and you'll need about.
It looks like it's possible though.
It's
if you went cheapest defense in the world.
Yeah, you could then go. You need to pay like less than $6,000 for a defense and a tight end, which is entirely doable.
Yeah,
but you can pay like just under $5 for that usually.
Oh, let me make a good point though.
Yeah,
this is where Evan's lineup was a lot more genius because it correlated. It made sense. He was taking high upside chances, but then he actually had statistics behind it. Like he gave us the reason of why he did all those things, and then this is the payout. This is what he was hoping for. This is almost just like, hey, I'm a content creator. I can tell you I built a lineup with CeeDee Lamb and Hill. Like, isn't this just look at how big my penis is kind of move? Like this lineup doesn't prove anything. Like what does this lineup do?
I mean, I guess you could argue that you're playing all starters. Is there a world where this is the best lineup possible?
Well, I mean, let's try to build it out.
Maybe.
I have a cheap running back. We could put J.K. Dobbins in here.
Yeah, put J.K. Dobbins in there. Like
put Jerome Ford in there. Like that was working good.
Yeah.
He's been injured, so I guess I can't find him both.
Just search Dobbins. You can't search J.K.
J. Dobbins.
It's weird some of the abbreviations they have for some players, not others. But so let's just assume, like maybe that's a different guy. Maybe that's a different 4K, running back. But okay, now what?
It's probably gonna be Jerome Ford. I mean, I guess. I just want to say, obviously, you've proved it's possible at this point.
It's possible, but that's what I'm saying is do you pay up at a different position? Do you keep going cheap? Obviously, we could pay as low as
tight end. What do you get at tight end here? Let's just see what the potential lineup
should be absolutely plenty.
Yeah. So
I could honestly see this lineup being if Thornton legitimately was the guy.
Mm-hmm.
I could see it CD just scores 25, Tyreek gives you 40, Jamar gives you another 30.
No, I got it.
It's not the worst of worst.
CD just got paid, so you have him and Ford as a little duo in that game. You get your cheap running back and your cheap stack to fit in Chase, who could probably have a big game on the other side.
Mm-hmm.
Then you're hoping again, you're shooting on what will probably be a high-owned Tyreek, but you're taking your shot on Tyreek's 30-plus point day.
Mm-hmm.
And then, like I said, you still have 3,700. You can easily put in whatever tight end you want almost.
And even if
and especially a cheap one, and then you can still get off the defense down there.
But look at this.
Or adjust maybe Ford up a couple hundred to someone else if you like that. And then maybe this is Chuba or something.
This is me punting at every viable guy. So then you have an extra 1,000.
This is very stars and scrubs, to be honest.
No, I actually, the more I see it, the less I hate it.
But this one, that's what I'm saying. Hold on, though. This lineup has $1,000.
Well, I would go up to Aaron Jones off Jerome Ford.
Is that what you would do?
I have a question about the tight end, though. With Ben Sano being a popular rookie tight end in a lot of fantasy football formats, do we think he's going to be chalky even for that price?
I don't think so, because most people won't assume he's the starter unless he's named the starter. And I still don't think he's going to be the guy.
And
do we think it's going to be Zach Ertz?
I would go Theo Johnson instead, yes.
It could be, and maybe you go with Theo Johnson. But to Evan's point, though, I think at this point, by jamming in so many stars and there's so much combinations that most people won't have, it's okay to eat a bit of chalk. But let's just assume we went with a bare minimum guy that might get some run, right? We go with the other rookie. We have 1,200. Is this lineup smart? Do we change anything? Where do we go from here?
I honestly don't think it's the worst lineup in the world. I thought I would hate it, and it's there's room to move it and make it a good lineup, and you're paying. You can argue the 3 best receivers in the league that have a quarterback with them.
With 1,200 to spend, I'd still rather get a better tight end.
I'd rather just go up at running back and just say, hey, screw you, Jerome Ford. I'm going Aaron Jones, and I'm just going to hope I get.
Well, let's play out both of the scenarios. And so Donnie wants to spend a running back, so I'll give it to you.
You've had to leave JK there and take Ford out.
Oh, you like that? Okay, I'll put him back.
I can't. I can't change it any other way.
Okay, fair enough. So I'll do that. Who's the other running back you want though?
It was Aaron Jones, because that's just another guy who could get you 30 points. And
I think that's the highest guy.
6,500 is the where he's at.
You could go Kamara.
Right, you could get a Kamara, which isn't bad. Like, this isn't the worst lineup I've seen.
I would probably go Joe Mixon just to have a piece of that really explosive offense, but I do like Aaron Jones.
I mean,
maybe Jones makes sense because you go Theo Johnson here at tight end.
Right.
Evan wanted to do it the other way though. You wanted to have it at tight end. What would you do, Evan? Do you think?
Well, so 2,500 is Theo Johnson. We had 1,200 left over when we had Jerome Ford in there. Let me let you punch that back in first. So, bam. Click it. There we go. 1,200. So, if we take out Theo Johnson, the most we could spend is Juwan Johnson, which is not exactly a sexy option at tight end. But if you want to spend $100 worse, you could still do Zach Ertz.
Nobody will go Ertz though.
I think Logan.
Hold on, one more though.
The starter, I'm playing him as a starter.
I have one more though. You could even do $100 less than Zach Ertz and do Jonnu Smith, who I don't know. I mean, who the fuck else is behind him at tight end in Miami?
No one.
McDaniels did say he wants to use tight end more this year.
Because their tight ends have been awful, and this year their tight end isn't awful.
I do follow the coaching index on Twitter, and what he does is he basically takes the snippets of all the coaching, press conferences and takes the interesting parts of their press conferences. And so I did listen to McDaniels talk, but even then I wasn't totally convinced. He was just like, yeah, we want the tight end to be more a part of the offense. But he didn't say like, oh yeah, we want the tight end to catch 5 passes a game. What one of those endorsements?
Jonnu is one of the few. Using him in the offense isn't even getting him the ball and targets. He is so quick and elusive and just continues with that offense. He's just another guy. If you put him in motion, if you're worried about him on a streak or a jet sweep, he is. I think that's more so what Mike McDaniel.
Okay. I have a way that I think I would like to fix this lineup, but I don't think you'll see it coming. Gov, what would you do with this lineup if you had 1,200? Anything?
I don't like stars and scrubs. You know me. I don't like stars and scrubs.
Yeah, that's why I asked you. So you would scrap this whole thing?
No.
He'd just switch quarterback.
I would definitely get rid of CeeDee Lamb.
Okay.
But to my point,
I need salary, so I have to get rid of one of CeeDee or Tyreek, and in my mind, it's CeeDee.
Yeah.
Then I probably switch it to the other side. Give me Burrow over Brissett.
Right. But to Donnie's point, then you're changing.
And then I will make my 2v2 of wide receiver and tight end.
But to Donnie's point, then you're changing the whole concept of this idea of just jamming in all the stars that no one else can afford. So
I don't like the stars and scrubs approach.
Yeah.
I appreciate that part of the lineup.
Yeah.
It's like I see that, and I can see where it works in the day where, like, okay, you've got 3 guys who can all get you 30 plus.
If you do Aaron Jones too with it, you could argue there's 4 guys who could get you 30 plus points in that lineup.
I don't think Aaron Jones from Minnesota gets you 30 plus points.
He could though. He's playing New York.
He's been playing New York. I haven't seen it from him quickly enough. Like, I don't think he can do it. I legit think he's like an 18 to 20 point running back. Even if he has a 2 touchdown day, I doubt he gets more than like 20.
Against the Giants, there's a world where
even if he has a 2 touchdown day, I don't think he's like going for 4 touchdowns or nothing like that. I'm sorry.
150 yards, 2 touchdowns gets him real close to 30.
I think it's a stretch. He gets over 80 yards.
He's the bell cow.
And then he might get. And even at the bell cow with Minnesota, I doubt he gets 80, 85 yards.
Well, that's the whole point of this show, is to give you the actual in-depth reason of like what this actually does.
Aaron Jones is going to go off now. Don't worry about it.
Right.
I've now thrown that into the So there you go, Donnie.
But instead of just taglining the show, like we built a lineup with CD and Hill, we talked you through how you could do it.
CD
and
Hill
then
and Chase.
It's true, we did.
How many lineups do you want to leave 1,300 on the table, though? That's it's not a lot, but it's kind of a lot.
Definitely do a different tight end here. Like this lineup still needs you to like figure out tight end and defense, or figure out tight end and you still need to do tight end and one other position and make a 2v2.
I will say Arizona
maybe Lamb becomes maybe in this one like you still sort of do stars and scrubs, and like you don't like Lamb is just going to become like Jefferson or Adams, so that I get a few hundred, maybe 1,000.
Right.
Like I don't need to make him Diggs where I'm getting 2,500 or nothing like that.
Well, I do think Franklin, if you're going to go,
where I'm getting like 3K. It's like I'm not saying I need to punt instead of Lamb, but like I could definitely do a slightly cheaper stud that I like. Like even putting Hill at wide receiver, I could put it at flex. Like maybe instead I could see playing Mike Evans at 73. That's kind of a stud. You have Mike Evans, Chase, and Hill. That's 3 stud wide receivers. That still gives you money where you can do something more than Dobbins at running back. You can do something more at tight end. Like we need some money at tight end to either get to a better one, or we're just going to punt and have to use that money somewhere else.
This is kind of what I would do here, and I would probably use that 700 somewhere. I would get off of Chase, go up to Jefferson because it pairs with Theo Johnson, which would make me feel better. I like Franklin.
And then turn it into a Nick stack instead of the percent.
Right.
Let's be honest, this isn't a super hyper-realistic lineup that you should expect to play week 1 anyway. I think we're spending a little too much time on it.
I almost forgot. We talked about injuries and things. Zach Charbonnet is injured. So there is a chance that Walker, who I think we all liked him. I think we got him in a draft that we did together. And I think we got him in some personals. He could be a tremendous value. Kenneth Walker.
PJ Walker also plays there.
What's that?
Both Kenneth Walker and PJ Walker are Seahawks, and I did not know that.
Oh, wow. You must be searching Walker. Go ahead, Evan.
You searched Walker. That's how I saw it.
I have a really gross lineup idea that I just shared. If we want to show that like now or just a little bit later.
Why is it gross though? That's the whole concept of the thing.
Well, I'm starting Taysom Hill at tight end. Pop Douglas, which we don't know how many targets he's really going to get. Juju Smith-Schuster is not even. Is he?
He's a chief. He's a chief.
Yeah, he's a chief now, so that's going to be.
He won't even be on the slate. He'll be like Juju Smith-Schuster will not accrue points.
Yeah, so this is a stupid idea now. And then I guess this is like my own really gross version of Stars and Scrubs. Whereas, you can stick in the Jonathan Taylor, you can stick in the Tyreek Hill because, as Donnie has pointed out many times, Tyreek Hill does pop off in week 1 and then cool off a bit the rest of the season, sporadically popping off too. But then
both Cincinnati running backs?
He said it was gross.
Yes, I did. Because we don't even know who's going to be the real Cincy back. This could be a 2-headed monster.
Which is why you either play one of them or not any of them. I couldn't do the 2. This is bad.
See, that was my point. I wanted to see how much you guys would vomit.
Oh, God. Why? Why would you do this? This is no. Disclaimer on screen. Don't do this, people. No.
We are an hour in. Do we want to cool off on the week 1 lineup stuff? Because at the end, I think it is,
We can do that.
Yeah.
All right.
So I have actually, I'll let you go ahead, Donnie. I had a piece of news I wanted to ask about too.
Well, I was wondering if we wanted to just look at the best ball. Yeah.
Here we go.
This is how this is the last one I'll do.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the weirdest team I think I've drafted so far. No, I do have one team with 3 zeros automatically due to injuries that I drafted early on.
Let's see them.
But this draft I think is so. I mean, I pissed yellow for a while on this one. I was taking home run shots at the end, and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
But Pitts here, and then Bauer, and this was a freak out pick. I had nothing I liked, and I was just like, I need someone. And Brock was the top guy on my list.
Mm-hmm.
So I just went off that. But Caleb and Cousins are my only quarterbacks.
Mm.
And then it just goes. Lloyd obviously is going to be the only RB there. That's in the backup with AJ Dillon now out. So I drafted him around ahead of ADP just because I felt like I had to at some point. And then here's where we went crazy at the end, I think. Last 4, just all the rookies. Who's going to go off for me possibly?
I still think Roman Wilson, like, to get him that late.
I was going to go with this guy, however you say his name, just because I had no
or something like that.
You saw
that was gonna be my pick, but it just didn't follow me.
This is not too bad of a lineup, though, Donnie. I think these are reasonable risks to take on these wide receivers, including having Marshawn Lloyd, who they don't believe is going to be put on IR at this point. I think they expect him to be ready for week 1.
Dillon on IR, which means he's RB2.
Well, yeah, but there was rumors that were saying that Lloyd could go on IR, and then they retracted it today.
Yes, there was. And I just didn't like how any of the other quarterbacks fell to me late. I was gonna go Fields here. He got taken, so I had to get pivot somewhere, and I needed a third tight end. I said, I guess, so I went with that.
I think it's Ishibash, by the way, and he's really good at. I've been hearing a lot about him, but he's like the kind of like you've been in the weeds too long guy, but he could have this fun, flashy upside. He's supposed to be kind of like the scat back, this kind of like Percy Harvin, kind of Tyreek Hill, a lot of jet sweep motions. So he's totally like a home run hitter. I think you actually played it smarter here because like Donnie, Roman Wilson was going in like the 10th round, in the beginning of this when everyone thought like the rookie was guaranteed to be a starter. And he got injured that first week of preseason, and people just like gave up on him. But I like the way you finished here.
Yeah. So the point was here, I was like, I got so heavy on the running backs early on just because of how it fell to me, and I do not regret that. I mean, I love this start, and then I felt like I didn't have enough ceiling at wide receiver, so I was like, the only way I'm getting ceiling at wide receiver from here on out is a Shaheed, and then rookies.
Did you draft the team after AJ Dillon was on the IR?
Yes.
Okay, now that would have been a huge difference, but I do think it almost opens up Lloyd specifically. Like
that's why he was picked here when his ADP said he should have been taken about here at the 16-8-ish.
Right. I like it though. This is your rookie heavy team, but I like it.
I really like how this turned out. Everything. I told myself one thing: I would not draft a round over ADP on anybody. I was gonna try to get value everywhere.
I think you accomplished that quite well.
Yeah, Kirk Cousins is the only guy I broke the rule for, and that's because I started off with Pitts and Bijan. So I kind of felt like I was trapped in a corner there.
Let me do something very valuable here because we do have 4 live viewers. People have been watching us, sticking with us, and our shows have really started to climb in terms of viewership and people just really appreciating our show. So if you could like and subscribe, continue the support. We have noticed it. It has meant a lot to us. Go plug your ears. I am going to do a bit of a promotion for the season. Me and Donnie and even Evan said he would be willing to do it as well. You already know Gov's take. He does not like to talk about baseball during the season. There's a lot of people who have this opinion that don't want to talk about it during the season. I think it's a missed opportunity. I think it's a fun kind of retrospective to look back at what you were thinking at the time, some of the silly mistakes you made, some of the things that you're still projecting to happen. I think it's a kind of cool way to like really take a skeleton key to what you were thinking at the time and appreciate it week by week. And I don't think a lot of people are doing it. Like a lot of people do best ball content during, this part of the dry season, if you will, for the NFL. But once, daily fantasy starts, a waiver wire start, I think we're actually going to be in a pretty good lane. And I just want to mention quickly, we had a different content schedule around best ball. And then I won some contests. We had some gifted opportunities to do some other drafts. The guys decided to do some personal drafts. Donnie decided to do this last minute draft. So we have different drafts at different points in the season. I think it's going to create great content, and I actually cannot wait for it.
I do want to point out, I just feel like a lot of my draft mates here made silly mistakes. Like Cup, he was not going this early for one, but you get Puka and Cup, no Stafford to pair with it, and you I mean, your first running back is Williams and then Warren.
Javonte Williams and then Jalen Warren. 0 RB if I've ever seen it.
Yeah. I mean, this guy got McCaffrey, and his RB2 is Rico Dowdle.
I do like the
Do you
hero.
guys really want to see something gross?
Go ahead.
I share my screen.
I gotta find. There's a lot of share screens. Oh God.
Oh, actually, I should stop mine. Bam.
Okay, you're on now. Go.
So I'm gonna do it slow.
Mm-hmm.
The guy was
CD
on
goes
auto.
4?
The CD goes 4. I get Chase at 8.
Wait, when did you do this draft? Today?
Yeah.
I did this Millie on Monday.
So
Okay, Monday.
I did it this Millie on my Twitch stream on Sunday. Actually, I'm sorry.
Okay, you had a spike draft during this one too.
So me and you did the same thing with like 2 quarterbacks, 4 running backs, 11 receivers, 3 tight ends.
Yes,
Very similar build.
Okay,
Which team are we watching here, Gov?
You can watch my team.
Okay.
The number 1 team. Look at his build.
Okay, so yeah, Alex
5
Tran 76
QB?
and you.
5 QB?
Before I reveal it, just look at that.
Wait, this is he
6
was auto.
receiver?
He was on auto draft the entire
It's showing
draft.
him his auto drafts. That means he was drafted the whole time, right?
He auto drafted the entire draft.
I just
Wow.
want to see what this guy's Q looked like.
I have to be honest.
I hope it turns into Mahomes and Allen.
Gov, I'm so interested in the weeds with content. The thing I noticed the first is that
Oh
you
my
had,
Chiefs. Chiefs-aholic.
I'll be honest. The thing I noticed the most,
After he took Rashad White, he went on auto draft.
okay.
Okay.
Just to let you know.
Okay.
But there you go. Right there. He took his first quarterback.
Lamar. Let's see it. Ooh, Richardson. Okay.
Do you think
Does he
this one?
Does he realize it's not Superflex?
No.
Oh, no.
I was going to ask in honesty, Gov. Do you think this gets thrown out?
I don't believe so.
It might with 5 quarterbacks.
You got Reed, Burrow, Stevenson. Yeah, you got some really good value out of your picks.
10 round. I mean,
I was about to say, we'll scroll back up to see me real quick.
see now Chubb, now that he's out for the first 4 weeks, I don't love him round 10. I would take him 12-ish, but
Well, Jacobson, Stevenson to start off the first few weeks is not too bad.
I kind of
Right.
agree with that.
I also have Kyron.
like he's a
not in
great
love.
running back.
Chubb is
Chubb's a
number
great
4.
RB4. But
Chubb is RB4.
do I want to?
I got a
invest
lot
in
of great
pick in a guy
value,
who's
but
gonna
I
miss
did
quarter?
reach on Kyron. But I trust Kyron's value this year.
As soon as we're done talking about this team, I do want to ask something about Kyron to close out the show.
No problem. Rico, Thielen.
Meanwhile, you get Herbert, Freiermuth, Leggett. He gets Chandler, Dotson.
I still think this draft gets thrown out. I hope not for your sake.
Oh
Johnson.
gosh, Carr too.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hey, a Carr and Juwan Johnson stack. Strong.
Don't
Wait,
forget
is
the-
that his?
Is that the only stack he has? Hold on.
His 4 tight ends are Musgrave and
I honestly think this will be thrown out.
Musgrave, Juwan Johnson, Gesicki, and Dulcich.
He goes 4 tight ends and 5 quarterbacks. This is definitely a
4
throw
tight
out.
ends isn't crazy, Logan. I mean, that's not insane.
Technically, he has enough to start every week, basically. Or he might take zeros. Who knows? But
Well,
it's not going to get DK doesn't throw him out like on underdog.
I guess that's an edge. You should take advantage of it because I'm telling you, if this team stays through, this is a dead team.
What a waste.
Oh yeah, no. This guy just absolutely nuked a McCaffrey team.
And I'll be honest,
no doubt, there is none of us that would not agree. This is the grossest thing I've seen in best ball this year. I'm glad I'm done with best ball, and it's time for the fucking season.
Right.
Well, on top of that grossness, Gov, we're also talking about, because I'm in the weeds a lot, we're talking about an ETR subscriber for sure at the end of the draft, and then a spike week drafter who, those are premium services. So those guys probably paid for, pet cranes, best ball rankings, stuff like that.
They've got $100 into it.
Yeah, so
can you go back to the end of your draft? Because I want you to convince me that maybe I'm just wrong on the guy. Because he was one of the guys I thought about drafting, but he was so inconsistent.
I have so much Ramondre Stevenson, it's stupid.
I have a lot of Ramondre too, and I really don't like
I get to this point in the draft where it's like the 8th or 9th round, and
he's just a great RB3.
A third running back there, and he's right there.
Mm. Go ahead.
Yeah, roll to the round like 18 though. Gov. Could you convince me that Corley's a good pick? Because I can't see it, man. He's so inconsistent. He showed me that he can't really catch targets.
Corley will only be like super, maybe not super, but he'll be really reasonably fantasy relevant if Big Mike Williams gets hurt again as the wide receiver 2, because Corley, I think, will rotate in and out as the 3 with Xavier Gibson, and he's basically a project wide receiver that needs time.
He's a project, but in the early days, I could see him being a red zone just monster. His physicality is what got him drafted. I don't know if he's ready, but his physicality is what got him drafted.
I'll admit,
AJ Dillon getting drafted.
I was like trying to figure out who to take, and there were a lot of guys in my queue. And the next thing you know, like I had Ricky Pearsall and McMillan queued up, and they both go right before that. So I'm kind of scrambling. I probably could have taken Okongwu there and then not taken Sanders later and gotten one of the other wide receivers, Franklin or Whittington.
Okay. Well, that makes more sense. I was just curious because everything I saw, he's just not there.
This draft
he's not ready yet.
This draft, though, overall just reminds me of a bunch of like teenagers having a fit or being brats or just throwing a tantrum or something. Like it just seemed like there was like 5 or 6 guys that just gave up midway through this draft. I think Hardman was drafted.
I like the team that has Sanat, Tracy, Steele, Whittington, and Roman Wilson, round 20.
Steele at least has a chance, and then like you got Naylor who might.
Steele could be the backup running back legitimately.
Yeah, and he's got some Peyton Hillis to him, but like someone I think took Hardman in like the 11th round, if I was right. Like there was just a lot of weird. Like I gave up on this team.
There's no Hardman in the 11th round. There's a Benson in the 11th round.
I hope not. Maybe I missed it. But I thought I saw him a lot earlier than he should have been. Evan, you were going to say about Kyrie Williams?
So I saw that Gov took Kyren Williams as his top running back. Now, I said before on the show that I'm out on Kyren Williams this year because for the biggest reason being that Kyren Williams running backs with his build don't typically last long at an elite level in the NFL. And now we're seeing news today that Kyren Williams is expected to be returning punts for the team, which you typically expect out of like your elite wide receivers like Antonio Brown did back in his day, and even Cooper Kupp for a little while. But running backs of his caliber don't typically return punts, and that's also a sign that Blake Corum also has a lot of confidence from Sean McVay. I don't think Kyren is going to get the same volume he did last year. What do you guys think?
It is weird. I have to mention quickly, and these guys can give their opinions on it. I saw just before we went live, like I'd say a minute before we went live, apparently McVay came out in a press conference and was like, you guys are making way too much of this punt return news. I didn't mean it to be like that. I didn't, like, he basically said, like, I didn't imply that it was going to be an every down thing. He was just supposed to be a specialist. And, like, so he basically tried to walk it back some, saying, like, the media overblown it. So I don't know. I do kind of see what he was trying to say. Maybe he's just trying to say, like, I believe in Kyren. We're going to give him the ball when it matters the most. And maybe people took it the wrong way. But to your point, Evan, it is a weird thing to say about a guy you believe in so strongly. But, I mean, Josh Jacobs played in the Hall of Fame game just last year. So who knows?
My thing is, if you're going to have – this feels like I'm going to drain every ounce of what Kyren has left and then ship him off. That's what it just seems like. And hey, fantasy-wise, I am all in on all that. Give him all the volume you need.
let's be honest, he kind of did that with Todd Gurley, so it is kind of his MO.
He didn't try to like kill his career though. He wanted Todd Gurley to be that guy for a long time.
Yeah, I don't remember Todd Gurley returning punts either.
Well, yeah, no, he did not. But you know, that's what I've never seen a starting running back return punts. I don't think.
I like Kyren a lot more than most people, so I was already high on him. I do think to Evan's point though, if you were already kind of low on him or thinking the hype was going too high, I don't think this makes you more excited for Kyren. I don't think it scares you off of him if you already believe in him. But
is Pacheco a second round guy now? Like high second?
Yeah, that's
for a lot of people. Yeah.
Yes,
I took Kyren where people would normally take A-Chain, and Kyren normally goes like next to ETN in that. Although with that punting news, people might have let him drop into the third, which I
can't believe I got Barkley at 17 today. I mean, that's crazy.
From what I can tell is everyone's just up on the Chiefs. Like Strong started to get drafted. Pacheco's a guaranteed second rounder now. People are taking Worthy earlier and earlier. So
that's why I kind of like getting a piece of that. I took Rice as my second wide receiver. Like I think Chase, Rice, Kirk, Reed is a good starting four.
So
like, I should be playing. I should have 2 or 3 of those guys probably points every week.
Even though you'll never
from guys like Palmer or Leggett or DeMarcus Robinson to fill in like gaps and stuff. Like so all I gotta do is have 1 or 2 fill-ins with this core. Like I think this core has a very good floor this year, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
Jacobs, Stevenson, when Chubb comes back, like those are going to be very safe, heavy carry, probably unless it is a full 50-50 split, which we haven't really seen that from McVay, like we said.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think if Corum's the guy, Corum will be the guy late, and Kyren will get burnt out having 20, 25 touches the first 3, 4, 5 games.
Yeah,
like I think there's a scenario where that happens, but in that scenario, I get Chubb after 4 or 5 weeks to start contributing to running back while I still have Jacobs and Stevenson.
Yeah, I don't want to drone on for too long.
I thought my running backs actually came out fine because like I did have sort of a contingency plan in case of one of Jacobs or Kyren goes out. I still have Chubb who should come in late.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of running, I don't want to run this show too long. I did want to say, though, I do think best ball is a very fun, interesting time. I believe it's only been going on for 5 years. So there is a bigger edge, I think, in best ball than any other format right now, even bigger than maybe like DFS or even like Dynasty Leagues. I'm pretty sure it's only been, at least popular or purposeful for about 5 years. So the strategies are a little bit behind. So there's a lot of fun stuff you can do. To Donnie's point, he pulled it up. His first draft to his last one, even on his personal, are very different. Like that's what he kept saying when he was drafting it. And I do think like that's where you can really take advantage of these edges in this camp news, which Evan's been really phenomenal about, keeping us up to date. So like, if you're willing to grind, I do think there's the biggest edge in best ball. With that being said, though, is there anything else you guys want to mention before we get on?
I just want to point out, drafting early. We talked about it a lot. The downfall of drafting early. I have one of my early teams. There are already 2 zeros in one and 1 0 in the other, just due to season-ending injuries.
Fair enough. Like I said, we didn't think we were going to be reviewing this many best ball teams. We got gifted some tickets and stuff like that. It was tremendous. Gov's never going to drone one of these shows. It'd be against his morality. I already know. But are you giving us a permission to review that team for our weekly best ball discussion, Gov?
None of my personal teams will be reviewed in the weekly best ball discussion. Not a single one. Not that one. Not the one I did in the background on stream. Nada, nil, niche, neen, nine, niet.
Can you be there for the quarterly reports?
The beautiful thing about that, Donnie,
you will know if it gets into the playoffs in round 15 and nothing less. Okay. Okay. I will say, okay. You will know if it has a shot of getting into the playoffs in week 14. That's what I'll say.
But the beautiful thing, Gov, is you'll never watch our content, so we can review it each week and you would never know. Good night, guys.
Have a good night, everybody.